Evening fell over Savannah like a thick gray shroud, slipping silently between the wrought-iron gates and moss-draped oaks that lined the streets. The city, a jewel of the South, had always lived in the gentle rhythm of tides, trade, and whispering gossip. But that spring of 1861 carried with it a shadow darker than any before. Whispers told of a figure, elusive and grim, who roamed the streets after nightfall, a doctor who treated the dead, appearing where the living feared to tread. No one knew his name, nor whether he was truly a man, a specter, or something in between. He had appeared without warning, a presence at the edge of alleyways and doorways, sometimes glimpsed through flickering gas lamps, sometimes only by the faintest trace of a handprint or a cold air that seemed to suck warmth from the body. His first known appearance coincided with a smallpox outbreak in the outskirts of the city. Families whispered that those who had been declared dead under the care of local physicians were later found sitting upright in their homes, breathing, eyes wide and unblinking, as if nothing had ever been wrong. The doctors were baffled, the priests murmured prayers, and the people of Savannah spoke of him only in hushed tones, calling him the Phantom Doctor. Among those who first noticed him was a young apothecary named Elias Harper. Harper worked in a modest shop near the river, where the smell of herbs mingled with the damp odor of the Savannah marshes. One night, just as Harper was closing the shutters, he noticed a figure standing at the corner of Liberty Street. The man wore a long coat, its hem damp and darkened, and a wide-brimmed hat obscured his face. In his hands he carried a satchel of instruments, glinting faintly under the lamplight. Harper, curious and fearful at once, stepped closer. "Are you?" he began, but the figure did not turn. A faint voice, almost a whisper, yet somehow carrying across the empty street, answered, "They are not beyond saving." Before Harper could ask more, the figure disappeared, leaving only the faint scent of antiseptic and earth. Over the following nights, more appearances followed. Some were accidental witnesses, a carriage driver, a widow watching from her window, a child playing in a quiet square. All told similar stories. The doctor would appear where the sick had been declared dead, work in silence, and vanish before sunrise. Rumors spread quickly, fueled by the city's natural love for mystery. Some said he was a physician who had died young, obsessed with discovering a method to cheat death. Others whispered he was a spirit, cursed or blessed to walk the line between life and death. Still others suggested something darker, that he treated the dead not out of compassion, but to experiment, to unlock secrets too terrible for ordinary men. Elias Harper could not resist the curiosity that gnawed at him. By night, he began to follow the reports, visiting the locations where the doctor had been seen. He observed subtle traces, footprints that vanished on the damp cobblestones, discarded instruments of unknown origin, and the occasional faint glow of candlelight in an abandoned alley. Slowly, Harper began to piece together a map of the Phantom Doctor's movements, and with each observation, his fascination turned to dread. It was on a night heavy with fog that Harper first encountered the doctor in direct sight. He was crouched over a body laid on a narrow alleyway, performing motions with precision and care that defied ordinary understanding. Harper froze, watching as the figure worked in silence. No sound came from the body, yet Harper felt a subtle pulse, a rhythm of life returning, as though the doctor were coaxing it back from the edge. The doctor looked up, and for a moment Harper felt as though the figure's eyes pierced into him, discerning the thoughts in his mind. Then, without a word, the doctor vanished into the mist, leaving only the faint scent of iron and herbs. Harper was left with the unsettling certainty that the doctor was more than mortal, and that his work was both miraculous and horrifying. Word of Harper's sightings spread, and soon others joined in the silent vigil. Some tried to follow the doctor, others sought to confront him, but the phantom doctor was never caught. His work seemed deliberate, purposeful, yet utterly secretive, as if he understood the delicate balance between life and death and the consequences of disturbing it. Over time, a pattern emerged. Those who had been touched by the doctor seemed altered, not merely alive, but different. Their eyes held a strange clarity, their movements carried an unusual precision, and some whispered of dreams, of places unseen, of encounters with those who had passed beyond. The doctor's presence left more than survival. It left an imprint, a mark of otherworldly knowledge. By the summer, Savannah itself seemed changed. Nights were longer in shadow, streets quieter, and the city breathed an almost palpable tension. Fear and reverence mingled in equal measure. The phantom doctor moved freely, untouchable, operating in the liminal spaces between the living and the dead, leaving the people to question what was possible and what should never be attempted. Yet, behind the fear, Harper realized there was a lesson. Death was not absolute, nor life eternal, and those who dared to tread the line between the two carried a burden that few could understand. The phantom doctor, in all his mystery, embodied that burden, a silent guardian, a dark miracle, a presence that reminded Savannah that some truths, however terrifying, must be faced if one wishes to truly know the fragility and resilience of life. And so, the city whispered his name at night, passing it from one fearful heart to another. The Phantom Doctor of Savannah, a man who walked the streets after death, whose work blurred the lines between mortal and immortal, leaving behind both wonder and unease in every shadowed alley. Elias Harper couldn't sleep that night. Every shadow in his small apothecary seemed alive, and every creak of the floorboards whispered the same unanswerable question. Where would the phantom doctor appear next? He poured himself over his notes, sketching maps, recording the times and places of sightings, each entry increasing the gnawing tension in his chest. The air outside was thick with humidity, carrying the faint scent of the river and the distant cries of gulls. Somewhere in the city, the doctor was moving, and Harper felt powerless to follow. By the second week of May, the streets of Savannah had grown uneasy. Families shuttered their windows earlier, servants whispered warnings, and even the port workers paused to glance over their shoulders as they carried goods to and from the warehouses. Tales of the doctor's work reached the city's more learned men, doctors, clergy, and apothecaries, though few dared speak openly. Many laughed it off at first, attributing the stories to superstition, fevered imaginations, or the city's natural love for the dramatic. Yet the accounts kept growing, mounting evidence that someone, or something, was defying death itself. Harper resolved to witness the phenomenon again, and so he began taking nightly walks, moving along the quiet streets in search of any sign of the phantom doctor. He walked past the moss-laden squares, past the darkened storefronts, and through alleys that stank of refuse and decay. Sometimes he thought he heard soft footsteps behind him, yet when he turned, no one was there. Other times he saw faint glimmers of candlelight that vanished before he could reach them. Then, one evening, Harper arrived at the old Magnolia district, where a smallpox outbreak had recently claimed 3 lives. The victims' families had already prepared the bodies, the shrouds crisp, the faces pale and waxen. As Harper approached the 3rd house, he saw him. The phantom doctor stood over the body of a young girl, no older than 12. His hands moved with careful precision, yet he made no sound. The instruments in his satchel gleamed faintly: scalpels, vials of dark liquids, and strange brass devices that Harper did not recognize. The doctor's long coat swayed with his movements, and the wide brim of his hat cast his face in shadow, so that Harper could see only a faint outline of high cheekbones and the intense focus of his gaze. Harper's breath caught in his throat. He wanted to call out, to ask what he was doing, but the moment felt sacred and terrible. He watched as the doctor bent closer to the girl, and Harper swore he saw her chest rise, just the slightest, imperceptible motion. And then, as Harper's fear turned to awe, the doctor straightened and disappeared into the mist before anyone else could arrive. The next morning, the family discovered the child awake, her eyes open, a faint color returning to her cheeks. Word spread quickly, yet the doctor was gone, leaving only whispers in his wake. Some said he was a blessing, others that he was a curse, a dark angel walking among the living and the dead. Harper recorded the event meticulously, noting the location, time, and details of the instruments, hoping to understand the method behind the miracle. The weeks passed, and the doctor's appearances became more frequent. He was seen at the city's outskirts, in the shadow of the river warehouses, and even in the wealthy squares where the elites had long dismissed the superstitions of the lower districts. Each time, Harper noticed a pattern. The doctor always worked in silence, with extraordinary precision, and always disappeared before being approached. Whispers began to form a narrative. The people of Savannah spoke of the phantom doctor as a guardian of the dead, a figure who would intervene when death came too early or too unjustly. Yet there was fear as well, for those who had been touched by the doctor often spoke of dreams that were not their own. Visions of shadowy corridors, cold chambers, and faces long gone. Some claimed to hear voices speaking in unknown tongues, guiding them, warning them, or simply observing. Elias Harper felt drawn further into the mystery than anyone else. He began questioning his own sense of reality, wondering whether the doctor's power was natural, supernatural, or the product of a mind driven to extremes. He visited the city's archives, consulted old medical texts, and even spoke to the few surviving physicians who remembered the doctor's first appearances. No one had answers, only speculation. One night, Harper followed the trail to a narrow, abandoned alley near the riverfront. The fog hung thick, and the only sound was the distant slap of water against the docked ships. There, in the pale glow of a lantern, he saw a body laid out upon a rough wooden table. The phantom doctor was crouched over it, moving with a deliberate care. Harper approached silently, taking in the strange tools and the meticulous motions. The doctor paused, sensing Harper's presence. For a brief moment he looked up, and Harper felt as though the man, or whatever he was, could see into his very soul. Then he spoke, his voice low, grave, yet almost gentle. Some lives are not meant to end yet. You must learn when to watch and when to step back. Before Harper could respond, the doctor vanished, leaving the alley empty and still. Harper felt the weight of the encounter for days, pondering the meaning behind the words. Was it a warning, a lesson, or a revelation of something greater? In the following weeks, Harper collected stories, observations, and fragments of evidence. He noted how the doctor never accepted payment, never spoke to those he saved, and never stayed longer than necessary. He seemed to operate by rules known only to himself, driven by a code invisible to the rest of the world. Harper began to sense that the doctor's purpose was not merely to heal, but to maintain a balance, to intervene in the delicate interplay between life and death that ordinary humans were powerless to control. Rumors grew darker. Some claimed that those who had been healed by the doctor were no longer the same, that their hearts carried a quiet knowledge of death, their eyes reflecting the memory of the border between life and non-existence. A few whispered that the doctor was a practitioner of forbidden arts, delving into the hidden truths of the human body and soul, daring to uncover what should remain forever concealed. Harper's obsession grew. He ventured deeper into Savannah's abandoned quarters, following faint traces of the doctor's presence, discarded instruments, footprints fading into mud, and the faint scent of antiseptic mingled with decay. Each night, he felt the city's pulse, the quiet dread, the suppressed whispers, the sense that unseen eyes watched from the darkness. He was drawn further and further into a world that existed just beyond the perception of ordinary men, where life and death intertwined in patterns incomprehensible, yet beautiful. By mid-June, Savannah had grown almost unrecognizable at night. The streets were empty, the air thick with humidity, and the faint, ever-present odor of the river. Lanterns cast long, wavering shadows across the cobblestones, and every corner seemed to conceal a secret. The city held its breath, waiting for the next appearance of the phantom doctor. Elias Harper had become obsessed. He walked every night, noting every detail. The damp scent of moss on wrought-iron fences, the rustling of rats in alley corners, the faint murmur of distant voices, and always the feeling that someone or something was observing him. He carried a notebook, carefully documenting each sighting, each footprint, each trace of the doctor's presence. Harper knew he was close, yet he could never anticipate when the doctor would appear. It was on a night heavy with fog, the kind that turned the city into a ghostly labyrinth, that Harper found himself at the old East Docks. A body had been left in a small, secluded warehouse. A sailor who had collapsed suddenly, declared dead by the attending physician. Harper crouched in the shadows, heart pounding, waiting. Hours passed. The moon rose, pale and cold, illuminating the mist that clung to the water's edge. Then he saw movement. The phantom doctor emerged silently, his long coat trailing behind him, the brim of his hat casting his face in shadow. In his hands, he carried a small satchel of instruments, glinting faintly in the moonlight. Harper froze, breath caught in his chest. The doctor approached the body, moving with deliberate, almost ritualistic precision. Harper watched in awe and horror as he laid out his instruments: scalpels, glass vials containing unknown liquids, and thin brass rods that seemed more alchemical than medical. The doctor worked silently, his motions precise, almost surgical. Harper's curiosity overcame his fear. He stepped forward, a twig snapping under his foot. The doctor paused, slowly raising his head. Harper felt as though the man's eyes, dark, piercing, unreadable, were looking directly into him, into the core of his being. "You should not follow," the doctor said, his voice low, gravelly, yet carrying an undeniable authority. "The knowledge you seek will cost more than you can imagine." "I must know," Harper whispered, his voice trembling. "I need to understand what you do, how you save them." The doctor's gaze lingered on him, a silent assessment before he turned back to the sailor. Harper watched as the doctor opened a vial, pouring a faintly glowing liquid onto the sailor's chest. Harper could not see how it worked, only that the sailor's lips twitched, his fingers flexed, and slowly, very slowly, his eyes opened. Harper staggered backward, overwhelmed by awe and terror. The doctor stood, adjusting his coat, and for a moment Harper thought he saw a faint smile beneath the shadow of the hat. "You see," the doctor said, turning his attention back to Harper, "life is not a simple line from birth to death. There are currents, hidden and powerful. I navigate them, and I intervene where the balance is disturbed." Harper swallowed, trying to find words. "Why? Why do you do this? Why risk yourself?" The doctor's gaze shifted to the river, to the city's silent streets. "Because someone must," he said. "Because death is not always just, and life is not always deserved. I am neither saint nor a sinner, only a witness, and occasionally a hand." Before Harper could respond, the doctor stepped into the fog, vanishing as if swallowed by the night itself. Harper was left trembling, clutching his notebook, uncertain whether he had witnessed miracle or madness. Days turned into weeks. Harper's obsession deepened. He began to notice subtler details. The faint echo of the doctor's footsteps before he appeared, the specific locations where death had been declared, and the recurring scent of herbs, iron, and decay. Harper realized that the phantom doctor moved according to an unspoken pattern, almost as though the city itself guided him. Then came the night Harper had been both dreading and anticipating. A smallpox outbreak had claimed several lives in a crowded district near the Savannah River. Families wept over their dead, neighbors whispered prayers, and the air was thick with panic. Harper positioned himself in the shadows, watching for the familiar figure. The fog rolled in, heavier than ever. From the mist emerged the doctor, carrying his satchel, moving silently toward a group of shrouded bodies. Harper's heart pounded as he followed, careful to remain unseen. The doctor knelt over the first body, a young man whose face was already pale and rigid. Harper watched, unable to comprehend the delicate, precise movements. Vials were opened, instruments arranged, and then, impossibly, the young man's chest rose and fell with shallow but unmistakable life. Harper's mouth went dry. One by one, the doctor moved through the bodies. Each revival was methodical, precise, and silent, leaving Harper both awed and horrified. When it was done, the doctor looked at Harper as if expecting him. "You are persistent," he said, voice low and grave. Perhaps too persistent. Harper stepped forward, heart racing. "I need to understand. I cannot let this remain a secret. People deserve to know." The doctor shook his head. "Some knowledge is not for everyone. Life and death are not for mankind to command. I do what is necessary, and I vanish. Remember this. Intervene once incorrectly, and you destroy everything. Do you understand?" Harper nodded, too stunned to speak. He had seen the impossible, and yet the doctor's warning settled deep in his mind. There were boundaries that even the bravest could not cross. The doctor turned, disappearing once more into the thickening fog. Harper stood alone, surrounded by the shrouded bodies, alive yet changed, as though the night itself had imprinted some eternal lesson onto his soul. Over the following nights, Harper became more than an observer. He became a chronicler, a witness to a force that both terrified and fascinated him. He recorded every sighting, every faint trace of the phantom doctor's passage, every whispered rumor he could gather from the city's inhabitants. The city seemed to breathe around him, alive with stories, fear, and anticipation. One evening, Harper received word of another death. A wealthy merchant's daughter, claimed by a mysterious illness no doctor had been able to treat. The family was in despair, and the servants whispered of the doctor who heals the dead. Harper, drawn irresistibly, made his way to the mansion. The air was thick with the scent of perfume and decay, of wealth and fear mingled. He waited in the shadows, shivering in the night air, until he saw him, the phantom doctor, moving with quiet certainty, entering through a side door that no one had unlocked. Inside, Harper saw him kneeling over the girl, instruments laid out with meticulous care. Her skin was pale, almost waxen, yet her chest rose faintly with each controlled motion of the doctor's hands. Harper's heart pounded. He realized that this was more than mere medical skill. It was a manipulation of life itself. He could not comprehend how the doctor achieved such results, and yet the evidence was undeniable. As he watched, Harper noticed something else. The doctor's hands trembled slightly, almost imperceptibly. Harper realized that despite the precision, the control, the outward calm, the doctor bore a burden. He was not indifferent. He was carrying the weight of countless lives, the impossible responsibility of knowing when to act and when to refrain. The doctor looked up, sensing Harper's presence. "You watch too closely," he said, his voice low, gravelly, yet tinged with fatigue. "Some things are not meant to be observed. You will be changed by what you see." "I need to understand," Harper whispered, stepping forward, unable to restrain his curiosity. "I cannot ignore this. People deserve to know what you do, how you do it." The doctor shook his head. "Understanding comes with a cost. Life and death are a delicate balance. Interfere carelessly, and you risk undoing all that is natural, all that is just." Harper, emboldened by a mix of fear and fascination, asked, "Why do you choose to intervene? Why not let the dead rest?" The doctor's gaze drifted to the window, toward the darkened streets of Savannah. "Because not all deaths are final, and not all endings are righteous. Some are unjust, preventable. I intervene where the balance is disturbed, where death comes too soon or without cause. And yet, each life I restore carries its own cost." Harper realized then that the doctor's work was not miraculous in the traditional sense. It was exacting, precise, and morally complex. Each act of restoration was a negotiation with forces Harper could barely imagine. The invisible currents of life, the hidden consequences of death, delayed. As the doctor straightened and prepared to leave, Harper called out, "Will you teach me? Show me your methods." The doctor paused, his eyes piercing through Harper's very soul. "No. Knowledge such as this is a burden few can bear. You can observe, record, and learn the limits of human understanding. But to step beyond, to wield such power, you would destroy yourself. Or worse, destroy what you intend to save." With that, he vanished into the night, leaving Harper alone, trembling, and aware of the thin veil that separated life from death, knowledge from madness. Days turned into weeks, and Harper's obsession grew. He sought records of the doctor's past, searching archives, old medical ledgers, and whispered accounts of deaths unexplained by conventional means. He discovered patterns. The doctor appeared in cases dismissed by society, in overlooked streets, in shadows where the living dared not tread. Harper realized the doctor was not a healer in the common sense. He was a guardian of a hidden order, a manipulator of the fragile line between life and finality. Then came the night that would define Harper's understanding forever. A cholera outbreak had struck the Port District, claiming dozens. Harper positioned himself atop a high, abandoned balcony, watching as the city descended into fear. The fog rolled thick, the river whispered against the docks, and the gas lamps flickered, casting ghostly shadows. From the mist emerged the doctor, moving through the chaos with silent precision. Harper watched as he approached bodies deemed beyond saving. The doctor's hands moved with impossible skill, restoring breath where there had been none, coaxing life back into limbs stiffened by death. Harper felt both awe and terror. Each revival was a miracle, yet each carried an unseen weight. After hours, the doctor paused, turning to Harper. "Do you see now?" he asked. "This is not salvation, nor charity. It is responsibility. Each life preserved is a debt, to the living, to the dead, and to the balance that governs both." Harper nodded, understanding more than he ever had. "And if you fail?" The doctor's eyes darkened, reflecting the shadows of the fog and the river. Then all is lost. The living suffer, the dead remain unrested, and the world shifts in ways no one can predict. Harper realized then that the Phantom Doctor was not a man alone, but an embodiment of choice, consequence, and the fragile boundary that separates existence from oblivion. He carried the weight of life and death with every silent step, every careful motion, and every disappearance into the mist. As dawn approached, the Doctor vanished once more, leaving Harper alone atop the balcony. He looked down upon the city, streets empty, homes shuttered, lives preserved yet forever changed. Harper understood that the Doctor's presence was not merely a miracle, but a challenge to recognize the delicate, terrible power of life and the invisible debt each of them owed to the unseen currents of fate. Harper descended into the streets, notebook clutched tightly, his mind awash with fear, awe, and a determination he could not yet fully name. Savannah had been altered by the presence of the Phantom Doctor, its people unknowingly touched by the balance he maintained. And Harper, now a witness to the impossible, understood that some mysteries were not meant to be solved, only observed, respected, and recorded.